All right, I think we are good to go. Hello everybody. Welcome to this first lesson of Revitalized Zen. As you know, for the past couple of months I've been actively writing and YouTubing, making videos of Revitalized Zen, clarifying the meaning of the practice, goal of the practice, and then discussing some issues, let's put it that way, in the world of Zen today, and how I view those things based on my experience of my Zen training, and then the past nearly 17 years. Wait a second. I've been a tantric practitioner for 19 years now, but then a full-time teacher of Sutra, Tantra and Dzogchen for this is 17th year going. So, you know, I was very fortunate, extremely fortunate to very early on in my path. I was 24 years old when situations, karma was finally ripe for me to start proper formal practice. You know, I had been trying different meditations and had many spontaneous experiences before that since I was a little boy. But I was 24 when karma was ripe for me to start formal practice, and I started my career of practice with Zen Buddhism. So I first trained in my native Finland for a year and a half, and then I went to Japan for a year to train in temples and to meet my master Terayama Roshi, who was really famous in Japan, like a bit of a Zen celebrity, and a really wonderful person, like a really genuine master of, you know, he was Rinzai Zen. He was in Rinzai Zen lineage of Japanese Buddhism. He was the Dharma heir of Omori Sogen Roshi, who was also very famous. But Terayama Roshi is very little known outside Japan because he only went to teach in UK, I think 2 times, soon before he passed away. So he didn't really teach in the West. However, 2 of his books have been published in English. The first one was published in 1970s maybe, so that one is very hard to find. But then there's another one which was published in 2002 or 3, Zen Brushwork, which is quite easy still to find. So get your copy if you're interested. It's a lovely book. But Terayama Roshi, he was a master in Zen as well as Zen calligraphy and Zen arts. That was his specialty. He was a professor in calligraphy and taught in a couple of different universities in the Tokyo area. And he was also a specialist in, I would use a general term, bodywork. But his experience, just like mine with bodywork, started with martial arts. And, you know, Japan, as you might know, has a very long history with martial arts. And there are so, like a wide variety of martial arts and how, what is included in martial arts. So that was his introduction into bodywork. And then over decades, he developed his own type of bodywork. So I was very fortunate to be very close to him for 3 years before he passed away. Well, I can speak of my connection with Terayama Roshi later, but During my time in Japan, I was also extremely fortunate to meet Tangen Roshi, Harada Tangen Roshi, who I've mentioned often in my Revitalized Zen videos. And he was completely different being, person, very different type of being, very different type of Zen master, and he had very different energy. I had actually met, wait a second. Yes, I had actually met, before I went to Japan, I had met this Indian saint, hugging saint, Ammachi. And she was the first fully enlightened master who I met in person, and I've met her many, many times over the years. But Tangen Roshi, whose nickname was the Old Buddha, he's the only Buddhist Mahasiddha to date who I have met in person. So I have discussed a little bit about my time with him and my impressions of him, but I just say that, well, I already said it, that he was a completely different species, I would say, completely different species. So very bubbling. He was bubbling with laughter all the time, and then in a split of a second he might let like a strong shout, and then he would keep bubbling with laughter again. And he was 82 years old when I met him. So I cannot really stress enough how big of an impression, lasting impression, meeting Tangen Roshi made in me. And his meeting him for those 10 days, when I stayed in his temple, I spoke with him three times in private. And then, you know, he was giving public talks for the whole Sangha there. I joined those. But even though it was a very short period, it really left a lasting impression. I cannot stress that enough. There are Tangen Roshi's talks, some of them in English by a translator, are available in YouTube, and there's also at least a couple of books that have been translated of Tangen Roshi's talks, or teishos like they are called, that you can get online. So why Revitalized Zen? That's of course a very central question. Why revitalize Zen? Why do I feel that it is necessary? Well, I remember the temple where I stayed in Japan is called Sogenji, and the abbot of Sogenji is the famous Shodo Harada Roshi, who's the founder of One Drop Zen organization, that is international organization. And Harada Roshi's, so this is a different Harada. There are so many Haradas in Japan, it's a common family name. But Shodo Harada Roshi's master, Yamada Mumon, who was also very famous, Yamada Mumon famously said, among many other Zen masters, that Zen in Japan is dead. That's what he said. And as you might know, Buddhism in general and Zen included in Japan and in all of Asia has been in steep decline for many decades now. So people don't really go to temples, people don't really practice anymore, so there's that, which is very unfortunate. But also when I look at my experiences of Zen in both Japan and in the West, as well as when I have observed through these decades, through these many years, the scene of Zen. I would say, with all respect and love, that it is not far from being completely dead. It is not far from being completely dead. And, if I look at, if I remember Tangen Roshi's transmission, if I remember how Terayama Roshi, how he was, what kind of energy he radiated, I have not seen anything like that, especially in the West, in Western Zen, and it's extremely rare, and it should not be like that. It should not be like that. So the main reason why I kind of have felt responsibility to begin this Revitalized Zen project comes from the fact that I have had those precious experiences early on in my Zen career as a Zen practitioner, and then lots of growth, insight, experimentation, and experience from my years in Tantric Buddhism and Chokchen and Mahamudra. So because of this experience that I have accumulated, I kind of have felt responsibility towards Terayama Roshi, who asked me to teach, who asked me to continue his lineage, but also it comes from, let's say, from past lives, that I feel this responsibility and care towards Zen tradition. Of course, it is natural that sometimes you have very strong masters who, revitalize, who make the lineage alive again, and then over decades and centuries, again a lineage or a tradition weakens. And then, again, revitalization is necessary. So this has happened in Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism Buddhism has a history of 2,500 years since Buddha Shakyamuni, and since Bodhidharma's times. Bodhidharma was the first Indian master who took Zen teachings to China. It's been about 1,500 years since Bodhidharma's times. But this revitalization has happened in Zen Buddhism, in Tibetan Buddhism, in different Vajrayana lineages and so on, many times. So this is simply, this project, Revitalized Zen, is my attempt to, bring the lifeblood back into Zen. And actually to authenticate Zen again. Zen Buddhism is in Buddhism there are three main vehicles. One is Hinayana, small vehicle. Second is Mahayana, great vehicle. And then there is a tantric expression of Mahayana, which is called Vajrayana or Tantrayana. And Zen is a Mahayana school. It is said that Mahayana is also called Sutra Mahayana, so like a sutric great vehicle, which simply, that term means that when something is sutric, it means it refers to certain kind of methodology. So there are many other Mahayana schools. Some of them have already disappeared, no longer exist. But for example, Pure Land Buddhism, where people devote to Amitabha Buddha, kind of like how Christians devote to worship Jesus, worship God. There is Pure Land Buddhism, kind of similar in Mahayana Buddhism. But the thing is that both Mahayana and Vajrayana, the goal, the purpose of those vehicles and the traditions that teach this Mahayana great vehicle teachings or Dharma, the goal of that is Buddhahood. Having said that, it is possible to, in Zen, there is this fourfold classification of different types of motivations that one can practice Zen. And the first one of those is Bompu Zen, which means like a secular or simple Zen. And this Bompu Zen, it simply means that it's kind of like mindfulness today, mindfulness meditation world where there is not much discussion about awakening or not to even mention full enlightenment. So it's simple in that sense. And so Bompu Zen, the second one is Kensho Zen. The fourth one is, I think it's Daijo Zen, and the third one is Saijojo Zen. And it simply means, this fourfold classification means different types of intensities that one can do the same practices and reap benefits accordingly. But I personally feel, I don't have no problem with anybody practicing Zen or mindfulness from that very simple secular perspective. By all means, all practice is good in the big picture, but I personally feel very strongly that that there are so many people around the world who have different karmic connections, different levels of merit or readiness, who seek for genuine paths, genuine methods that would enable them to reach full enlightenment in this body, in this life. And this is exactly what Yamada Mumon Roshi was saying when he said that Zen in Japan is dead. And when it comes to Western Zen, I don't think that Zen, from this perspective, from the most complete or most comprehensive of motives, I don't think Western Zen has ever been alive yet. So, there's many Zen lineages, Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese lineages and centers, but are there any living Buddhas? Even after 30, 40, 50, 60 years of practice? No, they are not. And this shows that there are some serious weaknesses, some real weak points that, despite, one thing that is amazing in Zen Buddhism is the work ethic that people have. Nobody sits more than Zen Buddhists. That is truly incredible in Zen. Like Tibetans and Tibetan Buddhists, they run away scared if they knew how much Zen Buddhists sit. But mere sitting, frogs sit all day long. do you understand the point that I'm trying to make? The mere sitting, the mere external form is not enough. So that responsibility that I feel after these many years of practicing and teaching Tantra and Dzogchen, and receiving so many transmissions from different masters mystically, I feel this responsibility that towards my masters, towards the masters from my past lives, that I need to try to do something to Zen, to authenticate it again. Let's see what I have in my notes. So I mentioned mysticality. So mysticality has a very different role in Zen Buddhism than it has in Tantrayana, Vajrayana. And having said that, mystical experiences never take the front seat. Is that how you say it in English? Never take the front seat from the heart of the matter, which always is awakening and getting enlightened. But along with Terayama Roshi, I had an American tantric teacher called Sivakami. I studied with her for about 3.5 years before she passed away in 2010. And the way how she helped me, the main thing that she really taught me was to, I had already started having the experience that I was being visited by non-physical enlightened masters, non-physical Mahasiddhas who would give me teachings. And this happened because of my past lives, because my connection, my karma with these masters. But the reason why I mention Sivakami and this experience that I've had in when I've received many tantric teachings and empowerments, Dzogchen transmissions from non-physical masters, that I was actually trained to receive teachings like that. So, and I have been teaching now, like I said, this is the 17th year that I've passed those teachings that I've received mystically to my students in our tantric community, Amrita Mandala. So at the moment I have these two branches in my work, which is Amrita Mandala for soon 17 years and this Revitalized Zen. And because of that know-how and expertise in receiving tantric teachings mystically in meditation, that know-how, that experience have been very necessary for me to give birth to this revitalized Zen. I couldn't have connected the dots, find the exact problems and to fix them without transmissions and one-on-one instructions from a number of past Zen masters, including Bodhidharma, who I mentioned. But of course, I'm not saying this to mysticalize or in any way to raise myself above others. I'm simply, I want to be open how some key points and practices in Revitalized Zen have been received, so that there is nothing unclear about this. But of course, whether it's always the case that whether a method and its practices work, these have to be tested firsthand. So nothing is to be taken, on mere belief alone. This is what Buddha Shakyamuni said, and that is exactly what very few Buddhists do. So we always need to rely on practices and our first-hand experience to validate whether a practice or a method is authentic or not. All right, so I hope that is clear. So, like I mentioned, some of the teachings that I teach in the context of Revitalized Zen come directly from Bodhidharma. Maybe I'll say a couple of words about Bodhidharma. If you are familiar with Zen Buddhism from before, you certainly have heard the name of Bodhidharma. But in case if you haven't heard his name, he's like this legend, really. He was a South Indian prince. He was the third son of a king who met his guru. Bodhidharma lived in, I don't remember the exact years, but 6th century. So, he wanted to become a practitioner and a monk, and he met his guru, Pragyatara, studied with him for a number of years, and then Pragyatara sent him to teach in China, to transmit the lineage to China. So I have written in my Revitalized Zen texts, I have written about ancestor practice. Maybe you have seen, I've made 2 or 3 videos also about ancestor practice, which is very central to Revitalized Zen. But, I have practiced thousands and thousands of hours of tantric guru yoga, where I have invited, through a prayer or through repeating a mantra, I have invited a certain enlightened master. I use the word Mahasiddha a lot. Mahasiddha is a Sanskrit term for fully enlightened master. So, I have practiced that a lot since 2006, since I first learned it, and with many Tantric Buddhist masters, Hindu Mahasiddhas, Taoist immortals. So thousands and thousands of hours. Okay? And one thing that one learns through these tantric practices, what should be learned in Mahayana also through sutric practices, is to learn to distinguish pure energy from impure energy. In other words, you could basically say that one has to learn how to distinguish nirvanic energy from samsaric energy. Samsara and nirvana are basic concepts in all of Buddhism. But then, after many years of practicing and teaching Tantra, it was actually because of Tangen Roshi's. Tangen Roshi, he passed away in 2018, and then before he passed away, he said this: "When I die, I won't go anywhere. I will be just here, and call me anytime, I will respond." Call me anytime after his passing, and he will respond. And I've mentioned this number of times in my YouTubes, and it is something that is extremely unusual for a Zen master, because he's saying that, after he's no longer physically here, after his body has been burned and, burned into ash or body buried, you can still call to me and I will respond. I had never heard from a scripture or from the mouth any Zen master say that. And when I saw that in 2018, when he passed away, I immediately recognized, like to any tantric, it's like, oh, that's like only Mahasiddha can say that with conviction and, fully knowing her or his capacity. And he was speaking about what in Tantra is called Tantric Guru Yoga, which is what I called ancestor practice in the context of Revitalized Zen. So then, as I've been contemplating this the past, since 2018, this concept of ancestor practice in the context of Zen, from there, things and my thought process planning has gradually moved on. And then 2 months ago I felt it was time to actually do something about it, and that's how I started YouTubing and writing those articles. But a very important point is that, I have practiced ancestor practice with Tangen Roshi, with Zen Master Dogen. Zen Master Dogen is the super famous Japanese Zen master who brought Soto Zen teachings from China to Japan. So I have practiced with Tangen Roshi, Zen Master Dogen, Sixth Patriarch Huineng, who is also super famous because of his Platform Sutra, which is like a core text in all Zen lineages. And then of course Bodhidharma, Bodhidharma's master Pragyatara, Pragyatara's master Punyamitra. And from my tantric practice I had already done many ancestor practice sessions with Buddha Shakyamuni himself. And those sessions, they were not really revelations, but made me understand that, Bodhidharma, Huineng, Zen Master Dogen, all these who I mentioned, their purity, their degree of purity and attainment is exactly the same as with these Mahasiddhas from diverse tantric traditions. So I had been thinking about this in different situations, in different contexts. For example, one universal practice in any Zen center is to chant the names of the lineage masters, from the present teacher going through many generations to Buddha Shakyamuni, and usually also chant the names of the 3 or 4 Buddhas before Buddha Shakyamuni. But this is like a universal practice, and I had witnessed it many times in different Zen retreats, sessions, different Zen groups where these names of the Zen ancestors were chanted, and there was this immense charge, immense blessing fill up the whole space, but the people wouldn't connect with it. So when I saw that over many years in different places, I felt like, why are Zen Buddhists so completely out of touch with their lineage? You know, in Zen temples and monasteries, they venerate the names of the ancestors every morning. And it's like 90 names of Indian, Chinese, and in my case, Japanese ancestors. So it's 90 names. So it takes a moment to chant through them. But to this date, I have not seen a single Zen group where people actually, it was pointed out for the Sangha, for the practitioners, that this charge is there and you can just feel it and take the blessings in. I have seen the same in ordination ceremonies. I spoke about this in YouTube videos, but I remember this lay ordination ceremony about 10 years ago. But also one time I was visiting Japan and I joined this private ceremony of a certain Soto Zen lineage where this experienced practitioner was given Dharma transmission. So he became a Zen teacher. And in that little private event, again, Shakyamuni Buddha's blessings and the felt presence of so many ancestors of the lineage, but the people weren't connecting with it. So this is a basic mistake. Whether we are talking about whatever kind of Dharma we are talking about, that is a mistake. That is a mistake. Same mistake is very common in the world of Tantra as well. You know, where people chant mantras and all these prayers, but they don't feel the energy afterwards or during. They are completely out of touch with it. So when I've had these transmissions from Bodhidharma and Pragyatara and others, I figured out that, their level of attainment is exactly the same as, you can see Tantric Master Guru Padmasambhava or Guru Rinpoche behind me in this painting, who I practiced for countless sessions. And I realized that Bodhidharma's or Zen Master Dogen's realization is no different from his. In the world of Tantric Yoga, they speak of something called light body or rainbow body. And that term is foreign, quite strange in the world of Zen. Body of light, rainbow body. It really doesn't mean anything to Zen Buddhists. But Zen Buddhists speak of this Shinjin Datsuraku, which means a dropping off body and mind. Body and mind dropping off. And that phrase, which was used first by Zen Master Dogen's, I believe it was Zen Master Dogen's, not his direct teacher, but the teacher's teacher. I might be wrong about that. But Zen Master Dogen used that phrase, dropping off body and mind, in his writings. And that dropping off mind and dropping off body is, in Tantric terminology, rainbow body. So I was able to figure that out. But even more interestingly, there is I actually forgot to check when this text has been first published, but there is what do you call it, like a collection of biographies of the Zen lineage masters. This text is called Transmission of the Lamp. It's called Denkoroku, something Denkoroku. Can't remember exactly the term in Japanese, but Transmission of the Lamp. And this text, this collection of biographies, has existed for roughly 1,000 years, if not more. And what it says about Bodhidharma's master or guru, Pragyatara. The reason why I say Bodhidharma's guru is because, the term guru for a teacher or a master has been used in India for maybe 15,000 years, 20,000 years at least. And Bodhidharma, being an Indian, would have called his master, who was also Indian, a guru. So, but what is said of Pragyatara, Bodhidharma's master, in Transmission of the Lamp is that, first of all, when Pragyatara was a little boy, maybe a youngster, like a teenager, his master, Punyamitra, saw him. I think it was some kind of like an event or a festival, wherever it happened, and immediately Punyamitra recognized that this boy is like an emanation of a bodhisattva. So immediately recognized that this boy has, young Pragyatara has extraordinary abilities. Well, extraordinary is not really the right word, but let's say karmic ripeness and extraordinary merit. Let's put it that way. And so Pragyatara, when he was a young boy, he was recognized as an emanation of a bodhisattva, which is something that if you're familiar with Vajrayana, you know about recognition of tulkus, reincarnations of past lamas. So it's exactly the same what happened to young Pragyatara. But when Pragyatara passed away, what is said in Transmission of the Lamp, it is said that he turned into a flame and disappeared. It's just 2 sentences. He turned into a flame, like light, and disappeared. And again, if you're familiar with the world of Tantra and what has happened and keeps happening to tantric masters who have attained Buddhahood, the so-called light body, rainbow body, that exact thing happens. Still happens today. And that same happens also to Taoist immortals. But during my Zen years and many years since then, I have not once heard a Zen teacher or a Zen master speak of anything like this. I have never heard any Zen master living refer to what happened to Pragyatara when he passed away, even though Pragyatara has a really important position in the lineage, being Bodhidharma's master. Okay, so, but like I said, to somebody who's familiar with Tantra, it's like he was a light body master, however you phrase it. So I was speaking about Bodhidharma, and I'll just say that, after many years of study, when he received Dharma transmission from Pragyatara, he traveled to China, and there are different stories of him, what he did in China. But one thing that he's very famous for is him teaching in the Shaolin monastery. So Shaolin monastery wasn't actually founded by him. It already existed when Bodhidharma went to China and to Shaolin. It had been founded some decades before he got there. There was another Indian monk called Ba Tuo who was there, and he was supported by a wealthy merchant who had the monastery built for Ba Tuo. And then Bodhidharma got there and started teaching there. And that's how he became, through his teaching, through his transmission from Pragyatara, he became the so-called first patriarch of Zen. First patriarch. So Bodhidharma was Indian, but he was the first one to teach in China. And well, Shaolin is very dear to me personally. I have a long history in martial arts, and Shaolin Monastery has always been very dear to my heart. And I would say that through these teachings, mainly bone marrow washing, that I learned directly from Bodhidharma. I first learned it from Terayama Roshi back in the day, and then further learned about it from Bodhidharma. And I will just make a small remark about that I was always looking in martial arts and healing arts, in this body work, I was looking for a comprehensive cultivation method. And I never really found it. I never really, not from many teachers who I studied with, I never really found like a system that was complete. And then I was fortunate to learn it from Bodhidharma, have really all the elements together, and because of that experience, I was actually, I think I will make some YouTubes about this original Shaolin of Bodhidharma. You know, nowadays Shaolin is famous for these young monks who do acrobatic jumps and, you know, something extraordinary like punching through or kicking through baseball bats, or throwing nails through windows so that it only makes a small hole, something extraordinary kung fu feats like that. But the original Shaolin of Bodhidharma, you know, it's been 1500 years now since Bodhidharma's days. And 1500 years, we understand that anything during 1500 years, it changes, takes new shapes, something, the old shapes, old forms, they change over time. And now we know Shaolin as this kind of like a kung fu school, with only like a superficial element of Buddhism with it. But it is known of Bodhidharma that, you know, he used to lecture about Lankavatara Sutra, which is one of the main sutras in Mahayana Buddhism, and it always means, Mahayana Buddhism means couple of things. It speaks of, teaches emptiness or wisdom, pragya. It teaches compassion, universal compassion or bodhicitta. And it teaches the nature of mind or Buddha nature, which is also called bodhicitta. And doctrinally, there is also this Mahayana includes this emptiness and compassion teaching, but it also includes this Buddha nature or Tathagata Garbha teaching, which comes after emptiness is realized. So Bodhidharma was delivering lectures of Lankavatara Sutra. I don't know when in history there has been a Shaolin abbot or a master who would have been capable of lecturing of Lankavatara Sutra based on his own experience. But Bodhidharma did so. And I know that several generations after Bodhidharma, the patriarchs were as capable, as deeply realized. But what I meant to say is that, yes, so we know Zen Buddhism. When I say Zen Buddhism, it immediately gives you some associations, some ideas what we are talking about. And these associations, of course, come to us from books we might have read, documentaries, interviews we might have seen. When we think of Zen practices today, we might think of just sitting or shikantaza. We might think of koans. Koans are like these, it's not the best word, but kind of riddles, illogical riddles that you can't solve logically, rationally, but have to go beyond reason. Or we might think of practices such as mindfulness of the breath, along with lots of chanting and lots of prostrations, lots of lighting the incense and lighting a candle and lots of bells and such things. So we associate, don't we? We have these associations based on whatever we have learned and heard. And certainly, of course, sitting practice, recitation, incense, lighting an incense and candle, and prostrations and study of sutras, this is universal dharmic practice. But having said that, Terayama Roshi, like I said, he had a long history in martial arts and also body work. So, if I say Qigong, maybe you understand, like this Chinese type of yoga, he was like a extraordinary master of Qigong. There are videos of him doing movement practices. You can find them from Amrita Mandala channel. And I have never seen anybody move like that. So he was really unique. So not only that, my experience of Zen practice, having studied with Terayama Roshi, has a very strong element of physicality and physical cultivation. But also those transmissions and teachings from Bodhidharma in the form of bone marrow washing, Shi Sui Jing, like it's called in Chinese, it gives a very special spin for Revitalized Zen. I realize it's already been almost an hour that I'm speaking. I'll continue to speak a little bit more before we do practice, but we won't have time to go into bone marrow washing in this session, but we will next weekend, next Saturday and Sunday, when there will be a little Revitalized Zen retreat. But yes, Revitalized Zen externally looks very different compared to the, let's say, established Zen systems and lineages. Very different. And there are good reasons for this. When we speak of dropping off of body and mind, that very phrase, even though it's very simple and short phrase, it already tells us what needs to be covered by Zen method for the method to take the practitioner from unawakened state to fully enlightened state. And like I said, I feel responsibility and it's my life work to revitalize, like I have revitalized tantric practice in exactly the same way, to revitalize Zen in this way as well, so that it really becomes like an authentic method to Buddhahood. Just to name some of the practices that we do in Revitalized Zen that I will be teaching in the future sessions, there will be bone marrow washing, 4 Dantian practices, breathing practices, very specific breathing practices. There will be standing meditation. Standing is called Chan Chuang in Chinese. And I have no idea how to pronounce Chinese, so Chan Chuang, something like that. Then movement practices, and something that is very unique in Revitalized Zen is dynamic practices. So in this session, when we start practicing in a few moments, we will also do dynamic practices. And interestingly, I made a video about this, but I will just briefly mention that up until 1950s or early 1960s, in both Japanese Rinzai Zen as well as Japanese Soto Zen, they did shouting practice or dynamic concentration, like I call it. So shouting with one's whole body engaged, shouting syllables, not in an erratic or chaotic or screaming kind of way, but concentrated, like producing a sound that explodes in a controlled way, controlled explosion. And for some reason, I'm still investigating why that practice was discontinued, but it was discontinued. So for example, Tangen Roshi, who was a young novice monk since 1948 or 9, something like that, maybe 1950, he did it when he was a young monk. But for some reason it was discontinued and it was never transmitted to the West. I have a very good friend, Lama John Hogue, who is a Lama in the Tibetan Nyingma tradition. And we've discussed this same practice, dynamic concentration practice, in Tibetan system, and he suspects that it was done like in a rhythmical fashion before, in ancient times, in the past, but this is also not practiced in Tibetan Buddhism or Nyingma anymore. Nobody practices like that. But we will get to that point, why that dynamic concentration, why shouting practice is so extraordinary. And it is very easy to understand if we think of mindfulness type of like mindfulness paradigm compared to awareness paradigm. So mindfulness or concentration means that you start concentrating on one thing, one object of focus. And it usually is the movement of the breath. And in Zen, it's common that you take a point 1 inch below the navel, place your attention there, and then start staring, start concentrating, not physically staring, because it's right there below your navel, but with your concentration start staring at that point and follow the movement flowing in and out in that point. It is common that the breath is also deepened, like as you are concentrating on that point. So both of these breathing versions exist. But my point is that, you are mindful of this one point and the breath moving in and out in that point. What inevitably happens is that you get distracted from that one point. You come to think of something pops up from your subconscious mind, perhaps a memory, perhaps an idea, and then you have that idea, and then you have a thought association, and this is how mind works, isn't it? That thoughts, memories, ideas pop up, desires pop up, and then you get distracted by them and you start following those thoughts. And then at some point you remember, oh, I was supposed to watch my breath in the belly, and then you remember that point again, and then you're focused for some time until you again get distracted. So there is a dichotomy with this mindfulness paradigm, which is that there is being concentrated versus being distracted. So you have concentratedness and distractedness. Is that a word? Hopefully it is. But you have these two alternating. Okay? So this is the mindfulness paradigm. Mindfulness, concentration-based mind training. Then we have a very different type of awareness paradigm, which is very different from this type where you start doing one-pointed concentration. So instead of being bound to this twofold process of being concentrated or distracted, you recognize the basic awareness, the most fundamental basic state of mind instead. And in this basic state of mind, Buddha mind, natural state, there is no need to start concentrating, to generate something or to accumulate something through concentration. And there is also no distraction. So this basic awareness or Buddha mind is beyond those two. And one interesting thing is that, like, mindfulness practice can never result in recognition of awareness. But awareness enables the awareness enables one to be concentrated. So it is very easy to understand from this example that the awareness paradigm is complete, thorough, but the mindfulness system isn't. And here's the problem. I spoke about this when I made a video about samadhi and pragya, which means it's translated, I believe it's experience and insight, but it's not the best translation. But this samadhi and pragya comes from the 6th patriarch Huineng's Platform Sutra, where he says that samadhi and pragya are the same thing, kind of different aspects of the same thing. But the mindfulness practice can never get there. It simply, you cannot understand the sameness of samadhi or unified experience and pragya or wisdom insight by doing mindfulness practices. So it has to be, you have to, with whatever techniques you have to shatter the layers of the ordinary samsaric, self-centered, self-based mind to recognize and to access this basic awareness or Buddha mind. So dynamic practices like dynamic concentration, where we shout syllables, which we will do in few minutes, enables that. It releases the habitual, impulsive, compulsive habits of the mind momentarily and enables recognition of this sky-like nature of mind. Okay? And mindfulness practices cannot make that happen. So this is the problem with one very significant point when it comes to modern Zen. Most Zen Buddhists, including myself back in the day, we did mindfulness practice. And it didn't lead, in my case, and in the case of many who have written me over the years with a Zen training background, it does not lead to awakening or Kensho. It does not lead to knowing oneself as a living Buddha. So there's a problem there. But not in Revitalized Zen, because I don't teach mindfulness in that way. This recognition of Buddha nature that sobers the head, softens the heart, and stabilizes your whole body, brings peace into your whole body, it needs to be a recognition or experience that can be repeated on daily basis. And if we have the right practices, this is exactly what can be done. So, recognition of our Buddha nature, in Japanese Kensho, awakening experience, becomes, instead of it being like a rarity in our practice, in our Sangha's practice, it becomes ordinary experience, common experience, which is what it should be. And in the world of Zen today, Kensho awakenings are a rarity. They are a rarity. And it shouldn't be like that. Zen master Hakuin, who was perhaps the most famous revitalizer of Zen in the past 500 years, he spoke of having had 25 Kenshos, 25 awakening experiences. But nowadays, when Zen teachers and Zen masters speak of Kensho, they might have had 1, 2, or 3 awakening experiences. And this is still like a beginner stage. Beginning stages. Not a very little experience. Let's just say it like that. In my first text, Revitalized Zen, the 4 stages of Zen, I spoke about the 4 stages. So Kensho stage, Satori stage, Daigo stage, and then the 4th one is Buddhahood, which in Japanese is called Nyorai, in Sanskrit Tathagata. So when we speak of Kensho and Satori stage, we are talking about, when thinking of that phrase, Shinjin Datsuraku, dropping off body and mind. Kensho and Satori is about dropping off mind. This is the wisdom or insight, realization of emptiness, emptiness of all phenomena terrain. In terms of used in Amrita Mandala, this happens in the subtlest of the two subtle bodies, also called causal body. And then the third stage, Daigo, it literally means great awakening. Daigo means dropping off body. And it doesn't mean literally. It doesn't mean literally dropping off physical body. Well, you have to die to achieve that. But we are talking about a different kind of subtle body. Traditional Chinese medicine speaks of the meridians, and traditional Chinese medicine usually speaks of 22 or 25, something like that, meridians in number. But that meridian system used in TCM, it's like a simplification. So there are many more meridians actually in our so-called astral body, which when it is purified, activated completely, then this body, it's called dropping off body because the astral body, this meridian system, has exactly the same shape as the physical body. So the causal body, the body of emptiness realization, creates the auric field around the physical body, but this grosser of the subtle bodies, this astral body, is in the shape of physical body. And you can think of it as, if you think of your body as like a container, and then you can simply imagine that it is full of these, about the width of your little finger. Meridians are about that size. If you imagine that the whole inside of your physical body is filled with channels of that thickness, then you get an idea of how many of those meridian channels exist in astral body. But that is Kensho, Satori, Daigo, these three preliminary stages until Buddhahood is realized. We can, when we do ancestor practice with Bodhidharma or Zen Master Dogen or Huineng or others, fully realized Buddhas of the Zen lineage, we can experience. They transmit their embodied experience to us. The realized experience of their subtle bodies. They don't have physical bodies anymore, but they don't need it to give the experience of the fully enlightened mind and body for us. This is wonderful, isn't it? And only Buddhas, realized Buddhas and Mahasiddhas have that capacity. Lower beings don't have that capacity. But the point that I'm trying to make is that each one of us can verify about these two subtle bodies, the subtle body related to Kensho and Satori, awakening stage, and the subtle body related to Daigo stage, through ancestor practicing. But of course, if you're completely new to this kind of practice, to be able to verify, you need to do the practices for a good while before things start making sense, because you do need to develop sensitivity. Okay, I've been talking. Now I've gone through my notes. I wanted to cover these basic matters in this first session, and we still have 45 minutes to go. I have to say that we might need to go a little over time, but if you need to log out, you have other places to be, then just log out. This video will be later in YouTube, so you can catch up if you can make it to the end. Let's take a 5-minute break. So let's continue at 25 past. Little break. See you in a moment.